Well, cool, man. Well, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Yeah, I appreciate you letting me reschedule.
Yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, no, it's all good. Um, yeah, and I want to dive right in to our journey into you being a public speaking coach by asking you this. I know we're all getting a little tired of talking about COVID, but it was such a big deal. It influenced so many things. But ultimately, how did you survive that time period, and how has it affected the way that you do business now?
Well, so I wasn't yet the public speaking coach back during COVID. So,
Right.
but I mean, in terms of just kind of surviving that time period, it was kind of whatever you can do, right? Like there was a lot of this, there was a lot of Zooms,
Yeah.
catching up with friends. In some ways, it actually, I think, allowed me to uh catch up with some people that maybe I otherwise wouldn't have, right? Because if you can be around people in person, you're kind of always focused on those people. And I think COVID was kind of like, okay, now you're looking for anybody that you can spend time with because you can't go outside. So it was old friends from college, it was people I hadn't spoken to in years. So
Yeah.
in some ways that was kind of a cool thing, one of probably the rare good things that came out of COVID. But obviously now, so much is remote. I mean, even kind of in what was my professional career of IT, I was still kind of in an office and stuff when COVID came around, and now, I've been able to work remote with that, and then, now as a public speaking coach, it's just not out of the norm for everything to be virtual. So I think it allows me to access a lot more people, to make a lot more connections, and it's a huge flexibility thing in terms of being able to give the attention you need to all the different parts of your life, right?
Yeah. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do right now in 2024 and even before you became a public speaking coach. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third grade students at Career Day, and one of the kids is curious and they're like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Yeah. So I help. So for my professional career, right, I help doctors and nurses put their patients' information into a computer.
Okay.
That's what I would say to third graders. If I'm getting a little bit more in depth and now talking to maybe an older audience, I work with electronic medical records,
Yeah.
right, and providers and nurses. In terms of my public speaking business, to third graders, I would say I help people not be afraid to get up and speak in front of people. Um, and talking to an older audience, right? I would say what I really focus on is helping people change the way they think about public speaking.
Yeah.
Because I think so much of why people are afraid of public speaking is misconception. Uh, I don't want to use the word flawed, but flawed thought processes, right? Thinking about things in a way that can only make you anxious. And when you kind of take a step back and think about it differently, a lot of people do realize, that's a good point. I never thought about it like that. I don't know why I'm so worried about this particular thing.
Yeah. So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I mean, I always wanted to play in the NBA, right? As a
Yeah.
lot of as a lot of little kids do. But I mean, really, the game of basketball. I went to college with the intention of trying to be a college basketball coach,
Yeah.
right? I went to Syracuse University. I was actually a student manager for the basketball team there,
Yeah.
under Coach Jim Boeheim. I don't know if you're a college basketball fan,
Yeah,
but
100%.
and so that was a great experience for me. I thought that would give me good experience into getting into coaching. My studies were in psychology, so uh, and then I kind of got into the basketball, business per se, and kind of saw the different aspects of it, and just realized it kind of wasn't for me. I'm a gym rat. Like I'm all about practices and workouts and games, and I struggle to deal with things like fundraising and donors and politics and a lot of different things. And it's not a knock on anything or anybody. It's just that's a lot of what you have to kind of also be able to do in an industry like that. So I had to pivot, and obviously a psychology degree not worth a lot by itself. So I made the decision to go to grad school and get my master's in information systems, and and kind of took me to where I was. And the IT world, right, is a big place of
Yeah.
public speaking fear, something I've noticed a lot over the years, and ultimately kind of led me to now where I'm helping people kind of overcome that.
It's interesting. I'm an IT technician by day for a large school district, so I get the IT
Oh,
world
okay.
quite
Yeah.
a bit. And it's interesting you mentioned Syracuse. We were watching the World Series, and when I was back in college, I went to the University of Missouri, Kansas City,
Okay.
and my wife was like, "Where would you love to have gone?" My number one school was the alma mater for Bob Costas. I wanted to go to
Yeah.
Syracuse. That was the place where you learned all of the tricks. And in the University of Missouri, Columbia actually had a good school, but I always thought if I could get up to Syracuse, that would be it. So it's funny you mentioned that because that was my dream.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Syracuse,
Yeah.
so it was kind of one of those things where I kind of always knew I'd be there. My mom worked at the university from I think when I was in sixth grade, so I was always kind of up around campus, and it was just one of those things where I didn't apply anywhere else. I applied there early decision, and so that's kind of like a binding thing, right? Like you apply ahead of time, and it's kind of with the understanding of if we accept you as early decision, you're going to come here. And so once I got accepted, I didn't really have to apply anywhere else. I was just going there. So
Right on. So let's get to the heart and soul of your childhood in Syracuse. What were some of the foundational elements of not only technology, but public speaking? How did these things get planted into you and evolve into these careers that you've had?
yeah, I mean, for public speaking, it was really my parents. I mean, and I'll say my dad a lot of times, but it was really both of my parents, and really kind of pushed me into public speaking. I've talked about this on a couple other podcasts, and really, I always jokingly say my speaking career started in fifth grade, right? Remember when you're a kid in school and you have to in your history class, you have to give a presentation on some state that you get assigned, right? I feel like that's a common thing. Um, and so it was kind of my first presentation ever. And my dad, knowing how terrified I was to get up and talk in front of my friends, was just kind of like, volunteer to go first, kind of coming at it from the perspective of get it out of the way, rip the band-aid off, right? But I think what he was ultimately teaching me was a much more profound lesson that I would understand not so much later in life of, get outside your comfort zone. You have to kind of run towards the things that make you uncomfortable. And so I say he encouraged me to volunteer to go first, but really he made me volunteer to go first. And I went first and did well, and shockingly to me, kind of just loved standing up in front of people and speaking. So I think that was kind of like the first time that I really um, kind of had that like unlocked moment of, oh, this is something that's really cool. And then obviously throughout my life, it's been a great tool and helped me form some great relationships and have some great opportunities. Um, as far as IT goes, I mean, that was just kind of I wouldn't say that I had a ton of areas in my childhood that kind of drew from that. I grew up, I was born in 1990, so I grew up kind of a little bit in both eras of kind of like pre all of this technology and then, obviously with the technology boom. But I think that was more of a thing of I just kind of saw where the world was going a little bit and decided that that would be a great opportunity for me for my professional career. And I also felt like kind of having a lot of the soft skill side of things, speaking, psychology, all of those things that would kind of give me a unique perspective on the IT world. Whereas if I was able to get those skills, I could combine that with the things I already had and do well.
So, who's been a hero? Who's been an inspiration for you in your life?
I'm my dad for
Yeah.
sure. One of those, and I think a lot of people probably remember this from when they were a kid, but one of those people that looking back, it was just like, man, he was always so right about everything, and I didn't know it. Um, he always used to say, "If I know then what I know now," right? And I would always laugh at him and be like, "Ah, what are you talking about, old man?" Right? And now looking back, I'm like, man, if I knew when I was 18 what I know now at 33, holy crap, uh, that would I could save myself so much time and suffering. But
So, What was the first speech that you gave to a group of people where you saw the sparkle in their eyes, you got a reaction, you felt like this is a comfortable place for me?
Wow, that's a great question. So many. I'm trying to think back. I mean, I wouldn't say this was necessarily seeing the sparkle in the audience's eyes, but when I was in college, I was a campus tour guide at Syracuse. So in the summers, I would give anywhere from one to, 3 or 5 tours a day just to prospective students and families that were coming to visit and kind of lead them around campus and speak to them and answer questions. And I was at a one of the basketball games maybe a year or two later, and as managers, we had, some of the senior managers would kind of sit on the bench with the team, but if you weren't one of the senior managers yet, you sat in kind of like one of the rows of the student sections with a lot of the other students for the games. And I get a tap on my shoulder during one of the games, and this girl says to me, she goes, "Hi," she goes, "I don't mean to be weird, but are you a tour guide?" And I started laughing and I said, "Yeah, why?" And she was like, "You gave me my tour when I came to visit. You're the reason I came here." And I was like, oh my gosh, like thank you for saying that. I'd like to think I did a good job, but I didn't think that like a tour guide would have that kind of impact on somebody making that level of a decision for their life. So I think, that was obviously a moment that stands out to me. And there's a lot of others, but that's one that comes to mind pretty quickly.
What's the best speech you've ever witnessed?
Ooh. Um, hmm. I've been to, I mean, I think I just have to say this. I've been to a couple of Tony Robbins events,
Yeah,
and that man's just on another level.
yeah,
Virtually, I've seen him too, and I've talked to some people who were at the same virtual event that I was at of his. This is actually just this past year, and he was giving kind of like a speech about gratitude and taking everyone through kind of like a way to kind of change your mindset or state of mind and settle yourself and be grateful for all the things that you have during a stressful time. And I remember telling people, I was like, I don't know who could see me on camera at this event because everyone had their cameras on. I said, but at one point I had to walk out of view of the screen because it was just like so emotionally charging. I couldn't keep it together.
yeah.
And those are the best speeches, the ones that, and I say this about a lot of things. Like I've said this about like TV shows. Like the best TV shows, right, are the ones where you feel what the characters are feeling with
Yeah.
them. And I think it's the same thing with speeches. Like those speeches that can make you kind of feel like can actually invoke like emotion and feeling in you rather than just providing knowledge are what are always going to stand out to me.
The one thing about public speaking is it's one of the top fears that human beings have on this planet.
Absolutely.
And people are always giving advice. For you, what's the best advice you've ever gotten in the realm of public speaking?
I would say two things. One, I mean, one is the number one thing I could say to anybody is it's all about preparation at the end of the day, right? Because if you know your material and you can really lean on that and you've practiced and tested everything and are prepared, the little things that could go wrong, whether it's a difficult question or maybe it is a technological malfunction or any of those things, they're going to affect you way less if you know your material so well that you can give the presentation without any of your supporting stuff. So, I mean, that would be my number one thing. When in doubt, just know your material better than you could ever imagine. But the other thing I'd say is to stop worrying about what your audience thinks of you. I think a lot of people, the big thing is that fear of judgment, right? They uh, they're worried, how do I look? How do I sound? Does my audience know that I'm nervous? What if I make a mistake? When your audience really notices very little, if any of those things. And there's a number of different reasons for that. For example, they probably won't know if you leave something out of your presentation because they don't know what you're supposed to say. They don't have your outline. So how would they know that? So I think it's a lot of those things that if people just were took a step back and thought about, is anyone really going to notice these things, or is it just me? They could really calm themselves down a little bit.
So if you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you can give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've gained along the way, what advice would you give that young version of you?
I think probably to take more risks, truthfully, especially at a young age. I by by the spectrum of things, like I probably played it pretty safe. I had this big dream of being a college basketball coach, and kind of as soon as I realized that wasn't for me, I kind of did the I want to go to grad school and get a job with a 401k and have a career. I'm not knocking any of those things because it's been great for me, and I've been very lucky to always have a steady job that provides me a good income and has allowed me to do a lot of the things I want to do with my life. But at the same time, things like this, things like starting my own business with something that I'm really passionate about. Like I never really considered that when I was younger because and again, I think the era in which I kind of came up shaped that too. Where, you know, back in the day, especially like even my parents' era, a college degree was a job, right? So you get that degree so that you can get a job. And I think I was kind of on the tipping point of where college is still super useful. You need it for a lot of things. It can still be very valuable, but I think we're seeing more and more companies not requiring college degrees. All of these side hustles, the internet, social media, all those things has allowed more. So I think if I could go back and say that, I would say, don't do this thing because of how you think it's going to work out. Just make the best decision in the moment. One of my favorite things that I've ever heard is a Gary Vaynerchuk quote. Is he always talks about if you're stuck between two decisions, make a decision and go with it. You'll never know how the alternative would have turned out. And I think that's a thing that I would have liked to probably embrace a little bit earlier in my life.
So of everything that you've done and accomplished and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
That's wow. You're hitting me with some good ones here, man. These are good. Uh, wow. Um, I'm gonna say just being a big brother to my sister. One of the proudest moments for me. My sister and I grew up around the game of basketball, and she was a very good sport as a young kid. Got dragged around to games and practices and travel trips, and she didn't really have a choice. And she kind of grew up watching me play, and she ended up playing the game herself. And uh, only one of us is in the 1,000 point club at our high school. And spoiler alert, it's not me. But when she would get interviewed on the news in high school, she would always, they would say, what do you give credit to for a lot of your basketball success? And she would always say, my older brother. He never let me win when we played growing up as kids. He always pushed me. I got to grow up watching him play. And obviously, it's not all about basketball. It's just about the relationship I've built with her over time and all the things that we've been able to share together. But that's always those are always proud moments for me to be like, okay, like you're having an impact on this person that you care so much about.
So at the end of the day, Zach, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm someone that is very loyal. Whenever you meet someone new or talking to people, if people ask me what's the most important trait to me and someone else, it's loyalty, and I hold that very high to myself. Like for me, I have four best friends that I grew up with that we've known each other since we were 5 years old. We're all still friends to this day, and I understand how rare that is. Not a lot of people are lucky enough to have that, so I really cherish that. But I think too, for me, um, I'm just someone that loves to make people laugh too. Like, I another question I've been asked is, when you look back on this thing, right, on life, like what would you say is a life well lived? And to me, it's just all about the relationships that you you've built in one way or another. I mean, I've been so lucky to have so many great friends. I have a great family, and I've met so many great people. And I think so highly of all of them that I hope that when I look back on this, or when people talk about me when I'm not around, they feel the same way about me.
So time machine pulls up. I know you're a big NBA fan. You could go back in time and see one game with your own eyes. Where are you going?
Game 6, 1998 NBA Finals, Michael Jordan's last shot as the Chicago Bull.
Okay, I love it. I totally love it.
Yeah.
It's always MJ. Every time that question
Yep.
comes up, it's always him. So, hey man, if anyone wants to hire you, reach out, learn more about you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, you can find me on social media. It's all under Zach Vaught or Coach Zach Vaught. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, um, X, but you can also check out my website. It is masteryourspeak.com. You can go on there, have some resources on there. We have an ebook on there and a free guide, and then there's also a link on there to my calendar where you can schedule a 20-minute free call, which is just us getting to know you, us getting to know each other, and see how we can help some of the things you're struggling with, and then we'll go from there. So
Right on. Zach, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. I loved it.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yes,
Really
sir.
enjoyed it.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.